Director of Women's and Ethnic Studies. I'll tell you a tiny bit about her, but I don't want to delay. She came to UCCS in 2010, and her research focuses on the socio-cultural impacts of racialized representations. I'm excited to hear more about that. As I mentioned, this is one of a series of Q&As we're doing with faculty. Please visit alumni.uccs.edu to learn more. One quick note, we will have an opportunity for live questions in the YouTube chat, so please be sure to pose a question there after we finish our 5 questions with Dr. Spaulding. So are you ready to go?
I am, thank you.
Well, we're very happy to have you with us today, and thanks again to all alumni who are joining us today. We'll start with a general question. Can you tell us, please, more about WEST?
Absolutely. So WEST is one of the best acronyms that we could come up for Women's and Ethnic Studies here at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. And we, even though it is Women's and Ethnic Studies, and we use that term specifically, we are a gender program, right? So we do work that is inclusive of LGBTQ plus identities as well. But we honor the way in which gender studies, the history of gender studies being found in women's studies, and then paired with ethnic studies. We're one of the few in the country that actually does gender and race together. Usually they're separate fields, separate programs, separate departments.
Wonderful, thank you. I would love to hear, and I believe our alumni would too, tell us a little more about how you and WEST have been active now during the recent social justice demonstrations, actions, conversations around the country and here.
Oh my goodness, we have been tremendously active in this community here in Colorado Springs, but across the state as well as the country. So specifically on campus, we have hosted conversations for our students, whether they be majors and minors in women's and ethnic studies, or for students that are of diverse background and just needing some kind of safe space, that many of them are carrying trauma as it relates to COVID-19, as well as racialized trauma as it relates to police violence and the exacerbation of racism in our nation. So we've hosted some private conversations with our students, but then we've done community work as well. When the campus students organized a protest, a march, we participated, many of our faculty members participated, our students helped coordinate that. I have been very much on the ground here in the city because my work is a part of this longer effort to dismantle systems of oppression. And so when we think about the police accountability and transparency work that has been done here in Colorado Springs, that has been done in the state, the work around the death of Devon Bailey, I was doing that and have been doing that for the last year. So the preparation work for House Bill 217 that passed here in Colorado and the new law around police accountability, helping to get conversation started and that legislation through our state legislature are some of the things that we've been doing. Dr. Abby Ferber is curating a series of conversations up in Denver at Dazzle. Some of our students have been on the panel there. Some of our faculty members and former faculty members have been on the panels there. And so we are just really part of the work that's happening here in our city and our state.
I'm going to sneak a follow-up question in that's in addition to our 5 questions, and that is a follow-up to something that you said. Many alumni, and we know that you've been doing work in this area for years. In fact, you were recently quoted in the Gazette talking about the police reform efforts. Tell us a little bit about how this time feels, given this long span of your work, at this particular time.
This time in the nation feels a lot different. It feels as if we are on the precipice of real transformation for our society. because so many people have been activated in this last iteration, this current iteration, and it has been a more expansive demographic of people. It's young people, it's old people, it's Black, white, Indigenous, and just what's happening around racial justice. We can look at what happened with the Supreme Court in the last few weeks, where Indigenous land has been returned to Indigenous community in Oklahoma. The stopping of pipelines have happened in Indigenous communities. So it feels as if we're on the precipice of real transformation and not just change, because often we see that a little bit will happen here, we'll change the narrative in some way, or we'll change the players, but it seems like the country itself is yearning for something different.
That leads us nicely into our third question, which is how can alumni, UCCS alumni, yours, elsewhere from in the university, be active or stay connected with West?
So we encourage that everybody sign up for our newsletter, and you can either send an email directly to me, which is srose@uccs.edu, or sign up for the Matrix newsletter. A lot of us write in the Matrix newsletter, and it tells what we are doing across the city, across the state, and across the country. And I would encourage you to go to the Dazzle events that are happening throughout this summer, or at least broadcast it on Facebook Live. So watch those replays or participate in the live conversations. And that's a way that alumni can stay connected.
Thank you. Knowing that you are busy, very busy now, this question may strike you oddly, but I hope you have time to develop new or old hobbies. Since we've all been at home for the last several months, tell us about a new or old hobby maybe that you've picked up, or some pastime that you're enjoying.
So I'll say, I don't know if it's a hobby, but it is something that being home has helped. That's saving money. Like being very intentional about the ways in which money has been spent, being in quarantine, which has led me to cooking at home a lot more. And I grew up loving to cook, but I was in a family of 7 people, so there are always people to cook for, and having to scale back. It's like, so what do I do with, all of these resources? So learning how to cook for one and enjoy it in the same way that I used to. I've gone back to that. And then being a lot more creative. I have started crafting more and making items for sorority sisters or family members and friends, and writing more creatively in this time. So that's been good as well.
I have to sneak one more question in. Do you have a specialty dish or maybe an old throwback that you've enjoyed cooking?
Oh my goodness, lasagna. It is like the perfect comfort food right now. And even if you make more than what you need, it's easier to freeze than most things.
It's true. You put in the work on the front end and then you enjoy it on the back side.
Exactly.
All right, question number 5, and then we'll go to questions from alumni. What has been the silver lining for you, if any, in this time?
The silver lining for me is really having the opportunity to examine what's important and what really pulls at my heart. Pre-COVID, and I know that this sounds strange, but being everywhere, doing everything, having, continuously staying busy can overwhelm us in the sense that we are not necessarily focused and laser focused on what is genuinely important for us. So I've been able to reconnect with family members and friends because of the pulling away of distractions, right? And to hone in on who I want to continue becoming and what I want to do with the relationships that I'm gifted with.
That's very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to go now to questions coming in on our live webinar here. So I'm going to take a stab at a few of these over on my other screen. Kind of a follow-up to our earlier question, where can alumni learn more about the current happenings with West? You mentioned the newsletter. Specifically, do you know if any are able to audit classes, learn more online?
So the university has a process for auditing courses, and particularly for our older demographic being able to take classes with us. For the most part, when we return in the fall, our program will be a hybrid program. So a lot of our courses will be online, and it is the discretion of faculty members to allow others into that space. So that is certainly a possibility. And then we also have a website that through the UCCS portal, so that if you just type in West on our homepage, you'll find our website and things that are going on in our community, in our program.
Thank you. Here's another one. We would love to hear from you about how you may be incorporating the recent social justice movements and conversations into your teaching and research.
Sure. So because our program is ideologically, we are both a theory and a practice program, we have always incorporated social justice work in our coursework. So our students, for example, if you take our West 1010, which is Intro to Social Justice, the name itself is, the course is about social justice, and we require that our students do social action projects, which allows for them to tap into areas of passion that are relevant for them, but also of the moment, right? So we are 100% certain that some of our students will be talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, the police abolishing and defunding movement, because it's a passion for them, right? And we allow them to bring that into the course. We also have two amazing new faculty members joining us in the fall. We have a specialist in Indigenous and Native American studies, and then we also have a specialist in Latinx studies. So their work also centers around social justice and activism. So please come out and, well, not come out, but join us online when we have like happy hours to introduce our new faculty members, Dr. Ilaheva Tuone and Dr. Julie Torres.
I imagine that you and your other faculty members will be introducing new material and new concepts throughout the fall into your coursework. I mean, things are happening quickly and the conversation's moving quickly.
These are, and I'm teaching a course on hip hop, and so the issues or concerns around social justice will be brought into that research and that work. I am also personally launching a Truth and Conciliation Commission. So that is steep in research around racial justice and ending racism, so anti-oppression work. So all of us will be very timely in the work that we do, in the research that we present.
Here's a question from someone listening. If I have no experience with social justice engagement, what are your tips for getting involved?
So if you have no background at all, I would encourage you to first build a reading list. There are so many texts that are rising to the New York Times bestseller list that are specifically focused on social justice and and in areas or industries that might be appealing to you, whether that's in prison or women's labor. There are so many texts that are available. And then I would encourage that you begin to connect with communities. As the advertisement says, there's a Facebook group for everything, right? So even if you are just like Colorado Springs social justice, there's a Facebook group for that. Surge is showing up for racial justice, and there's a chapter here in Colorado Springs, so you can look for that specifically here if you are here in Colorado. But wherever you are, I'm certain that there is a chapter close to you. The Women's March has chapters that are throughout the country in every state. Indivisible is another place that has chapters across the country in every state. And then you can join us on truthandconciliation.org. And when you look at the work that we're doing at truthandconciliation.org, there's a free ebook for people who sign up. So there's a first start.
Thank you. Do you have time for one more?
Absolutely.
All right. What would you say is the importance or impact of learning about ethnicity and gender other than your own?
Well, it helps us to live more inclusively in the world. It helps to expand our understanding of who we are as human beings when we learn about who other people are. It would be an okay life if all you knew existed were Granny Smith apples, right? If all you knew about apples were Granny Smith, you could survive and your life would be all right. But if you also knew that there were Washington Delicious and Honeycrisp and Gala and Fiji, how much richer does your life become knowing that all of those different varieties of apples exist?
That's a beautiful analogy. Thank you. All right, I misspoke. We had a couple more questions come in. Do you mind if I consolidate them and ask you one more?
Sure.
All right. If you could recommend just one book or piece of media or perhaps a podcast for anyone who's interested in starting or furthering their interest and work in this area, what would you recommend?
The first movie that I would recommend, because it's so timely, but also triggers how systemic things are, I would encourage people to watch 13th, right? Yes. 13th is a documentary written and produced by Ava DuVernay, who is amazing. And that's my girl crush, everybody, if anybody knows her and wants to connect us. But the 13th as a film will help people to see in very present day experiences issues that stem back hundreds of years into our nation's foundation with slavery and how it has not been abolished in our country and what we are living with right now in 2020. So that would be a documentary that I suggest as a starting point to spark somebody's interest. A text, I would say Stamped. If you are a reader, I would say read Stamped by Ibram Kehinde. And again, it is a history of the use of race throughout and racial ideology throughout our nation.
Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that documentary. It is very powerful. I watched it and I agree with you. Highly recommend it.
Yes. And it'll make you want to know more, right?
Yes. Well, I am so appreciative of your time this afternoon, and our alumni are as well. Thank you for spending time with us. Do you have any parting thoughts or last thoughts you'd like to share?
I would. I would say, because I get this question often in a variety of different ways. Like people will ask, do you have men taking your classes, or is it for me as a white person? The work of gender and race studies is for everyone. It is for everyone. And so there is a way, if you desire, for you to tap in. Do not feel alienated. Please join us. And it doesn't matter what your major might have been or what have you. If you are encouraging young people who are just getting ready to start their experience here at UCCS, tell them, take a West course.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate your time. Thanks to you alumni who are on. This will be available for replay, and watch for more live 5 things you need to know events coming in the future. Thank you again, Dr. Spaulding.
Thank you.